Hello and welcome to another episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews. And today we're taking a look at A Quiet Place Part 2. Now, of course, A Quiet Place, the original movie, was a huge surprise. It was a kind of passion project for real-life husband and wife Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. And it became one of the highest-grossing movies of that year. So now, in amongst all the COVID kind of stuff and everything, number 2 has come out. I think it was one of the, alongside F9, was one of the most pushed back films. I think the publicist actually told me at the screening that I was at that it came out nearly to the day, 12 months after it was supposed to be out in cinemas. So one of the films that really got pushed back. And this film pretty much starts off where the original movie leaves off. There's a little flashback in here where you actually see the event that started it all, and then it goes back to Evelyn, played by Emily Blunt, having to leave the farm with Regan, her daughter, played by Millicent Simmons, and her son Marcus, played by Noah Jupe, because of a fire, which we see the starts of at the end of the first film. And from there it shows an all-new adventure as they end up having to team up with a family friend, Emmett, played by Cillian Murphy, and once again take on these creatures. Now, I know you were a huge fan of the first film. Mm-hmm. What did you think of this film? And did you get a shock like everybody in the screening that I was in when John Krasinski suddenly appeared on the screen after he died in the first film?
Yeah, so when I first started watching this film, I was a little bit confused. I thought, maybe this is a prequel. But then I was trying to figure out in my own mind, maybe he didn't die, but I'm sure he died in the last movie. But then I was like, has everyone gone back to normal life, and is this happening all over again? So I wasn't quite sure what was going on at the start, and I realised, and I think it's good to share this, it's not a spoiler, but yeah, it goes back to the very beginning. You get a glimpse of how this happened in the first place, where it started, where it originated, and then after that glimpse, it skips forward to day, is it 474 or something like that? I probably haven't got the right exact day, but it skips forward right to that time where the last film left off. Basically, where that stopped, this starts immediately. So I've now seen this film twice already because I really liked it. But I went back and saw it with a friend, this time realising that where it starts is, it gives you a glimpse of where it all originated and then jumps forward. So I wasn't confused the second time around. So for anyone that hasn't seen it yet, that will help you to understand where the film starts. But it was really good seeing the character of Lee Abbott in the start of this film, and a reminder of, who the dad was, and bringing back all those, memories of the input he had into the last film. And so it also gives you that heartfelt empathy for the family who's lost that dad, because you've seen him again at the start of this film.
As John Krasinski said when I interviewed him, he just felt that writer-director wasn't enough, and he wanted an extra acting credit to his name as well. So.
Yeah. Well, we're glad to see him in the film. And yeah, once I realised where the film started, the second time around that I watched it, I thought it was a really great idea that they had done that. And yeah, I really enjoyed it the second time even more than the first time, just watching it from that perspective of knowing where it was at.
And it kind of brings in an extra change for this franchise as well, in that the first film was very much from his character's point of view, whereas this second film, there's actually a huge chunk of this film that is from Regan's point of view as well. Millicent Simmons gets to carry this film for a huge chunk of the film as well. And I was trying to remember back to the first film. I think that flashback at the start is almost the first time that you see major characters from outside of their family. I think there was a few that popped up as kind of almost bad guys in the first film, but like the introduction of Emmett, Cillian Murphy's character.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's the first family friend that we get to see as well. But yeah, it's interesting because this film is very much a vehicle for John Krasinski's real-life wife, Emily Blunt. She gets to carry a lot of this film, as does Millicent Simmons as well. And I like that change because I think 10 years ago in Hollywood, this movie would have been carried by Noah Jupe, whereas this time around they actually let Millicent Simmons carry the film, which I think is an absolutely great decision to make, because her character, how do I put this nicely, is actually braver than her brother in this franchise. He's a little bit of a wuss, so it makes more sense that she's the one that decides to go out into the world to try and protect her family. What did you think of the inclusion of Emmett as a character? Because I know a few people out there who have kind of reacted badly to it because they felt that this should have been an Emily Blunt film, and it almost felt like they had to put a male actor in there to kind of appease certain people in the audience, whereas they couldn't have just let it be an Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons film.
I actually think that it brought something extra to the film. So, yes, you have Millie's character, Regan, carrying a big chunk of the film with Emmett joining her, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then you've got the other storyline of Emily Blunt's character, Evelyn, caring for her baby and also for her son, Marcus, who's played by Noah Jupe. You've got two kind of things happening. You've got a mum with her children trying to protect them, care for them because an accident's also happened and care is needed, and for survival purposes she needs to get supplies and make sure everyone's safe. And then you've got Regan as a character. You've got her and Emma on a different kind of mission to help save more people. So Emily's more focused, Emily Blunt's character is more focused on immediate family, I suppose. And then you've got Regan and Emmett that are focused on their family, but also a bit more of humanity, not just their family. I don't have any criticism of Emmett's character joining. I think it also gives a glimpse of what happens to friendships when it's a state of survival, and how you can change, and whether you even choose to help your friends or not, or you're self-preserving and surviving without putting yourself in any danger or putting someone else in danger. I think it gives a bit of an overview of who you can become, or what choice you have of who you choose to become, or how you change and think of others. And so it brings another perspective in that you wouldn't have if his character wasn't there.
Talking of putting people in danger, one of the other things I loved when I got to interview John Krasinski was he said a really surreal moment for him on this film set was when he realised that he'd just put his real-life wife into a car and was having a bus drive at her, and he said, what other occupation in the world would you do that? And your only thing is, oh, gee, I hope this looks real. Yeah, like it's such a great dynamic that those two have as husband and wife as well. So, yeah, it's I think they're one of the best husband and wife teams in Hollywood at the moment. And if anything, this film kind of again shows that like John Krasinski is a really, really good director. This is a guy who for years in America was known as that guy from The Office, like that goofy kind of guy. And then he reinvented himself with playing Jack Ryan in the series where like he had more of an action role. But the first film and this really shows that he is a good director. This film really mixes horror with sci-fi and action so well. And when you consider that the background that he comes from, it's kind of phenomenal what he's managed to achieve with these films. Even more to the point where I actually think I enjoyed this second film more than I did the first film. I like that extra element that they added to it where there was more kind of action sequences in this film than in the first one, and I think that actually ramped things up. I also thought it was interesting that in some of the smaller roles in this film, they had known actors, like Digimon Hunsu plays a character that they meet on their journey, and of course most people would know him from the Thor franchise. But then you've also got Scoot McNairy, who I admit is one of my favourites that I love to see pop up in a movie, and he pops up in a really, really small role in this film. So obviously big name actors out there are wanting to work with John Krasinski as a director as well.
Yep. I think there's some extra special things to this movie. I like even just the name of it, The Quiet Place. There aren't many films that can get away with very little talking or such quiet talking for such long periods of time and keep you just wanting more from the movie. Like, just you're enjoying the movie, and there's scenes where you're in the cinema and you can hear people eating their popcorn or crunching their chips because there's scenes that are so quiet. But people are like really zoned into the movie, and you can see that they're enjoying the movie, and I don't know that many movies could get away with that. Also, I love that Regan's character, Millie, the actor Millie, she actually really is deaf, and I remember I turned to you at one point of the movie and I said, is she really deaf in real life? Because she's doing an amazing job here, and her sign language looks like it's just flowing, and she's naturally talented. And so we looked it up later, and yeah, she is deaf, and I think she's done a brilliant job within this franchise, and you can see she's got such a future in acting. She's a natural. And you've got some really great actors here. The cast itself is amazing. Noah Jupe, his character of Marcus, his character isn't as strong as his sister in...
He's a mummy's boy.
In the franchise. But there are scenes where you can see the terror in him and the pain that he goes through. And then you see scenes where you're getting annoyed with him because he makes some choices where you're like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
There's a scene, it doesn't give too much away, but he's wandering around at a point where he shouldn't really be wandering around, and he should just be safe with his baby brother. And he's wandering around, and you're frustrated because you're like, what are you doing, kid? Like, you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting your baby brother in danger, and, but it's what a kid would do, thinking that they're being a bit, I don't know, protective of their family, or too curious and making silly mistakes. And, yeah, so those feelings are really drawn out within you where you're frustrated and you're like, what are you doing? So that his acting ability obviously draws you into those moments and has your feelings are changing and your emotions are changing in those scenes. And same with the character of Regan. She, you're going through different parts of the movie with her where you're frustrated for her, you're frustrated with her, and you're on the edge of your seat sometimes thinking, hurry up, like something needs to happen before it's too late for you or too late for someone else. And yeah, I think good casting in this film.
I love the sequences between Millicent Simmons and Cillian Murphy when they first start out on their journey and they can't communicate. He doesn't sign language. He doesn't know sign language. He can't sign to her, and she has no way of communicating with him. And I love those scenes because I have an auntie who is deaf, and she relies on lip reading to communicate with people. And one of the things that I know for her is really frustrating is either when people treat her like she's stupid because she can't communicate with them, or she can't communicate to them because they don't understand her, and that really frustrates her. And I love those scenes where Millicent is trying to tell, Regan is trying to tell Emmett something important, but she can't put it across to him, and it's frustrating her. And she's getting angry with him because she doesn't understand why he can't understand her. And I almost wonder whether or not John Krasinski worked with Millicent on those scenes to find out what frustrates deaf people, because it seemed to come across so well in the film, and I know that is something that really frustrates deaf people as well. So I thought that was one of my favourite scenes for that entire movie, and it felt like it was something that John Krasinski had worked with her because she is actually an ambassador for the Deaf Society and places like that in America. So yeah, I really, really like that, and I think she's going to become a great actress. I can see her playing so many roles in the future, and I love the fact that John Krasinski gives her the power to be herself in a sense. Like, it would have been so easy for John Krasinski to have just decided, you know what, I'm going to make it that she can hear in the film and she just has to pretend. But the fact that they actually allow her to play a deaf character, and I was reading a little bit before where she actually thought she would never be an actress because she never thought there was a role for deaf people. So the fact that one of the biggest heroes of a franchise like this is a deaf character, I think that's a great thing for kids that are watching this franchise that are deaf themselves.
I think Emily Blunt does really well too with sign language in the film. And so I'm not sure if she already knew some sign language or if Millie's taught her or if she's had someone else teach her. But also you can see that she's using her lips to communicate as well through the movie, and you see her use it with all her family, not just Millie, and that's a way for them to quietly communicate in a time that they can't make much noise. But yeah, I think Emily does really well with that too in the story.
Yeah, and we saw an Australian movie that came out last year during lockdown too, called Unsound, and that was the same. That actually featured actually a deaf transgender actor playing a deaf transgender character in the film as well. So it is good that directors out there are now giving a voice, I guess, to deaf people and allowing them to to kind of play themselves in films. I think it's a really, really good thing. And like I said, I'm sure Millicent Simmons is going to end up becoming a really, really big name in Hollywood. And I guess to wrap up, what are you going to give this one out of 5?
I'm going to give it 4.5 out of 5. I think it's got lots of action that you would expect. You've got, as I said, different strengths of character in there, great acting abilities, and as I said, I love that it did start with where it all originated and where the characters have gotten to now, and it shows the survival of people, the change in people's character, and then what they choose to do with that in the end. People living in fear, people taking chances. And I don't always like monster or alien type movies because there's a part of it that just doesn't feel real. But I think in this movie, particularly, that doesn't seem to be an issue for me at all. It feels real that they have to be quiet. It feels real that there's a real danger out there. And yes, you see, I'll call them monsters. You see the monsters through the movie, but you see more of the real people than the monsters. And I think that's why I like it so much, is because it's more focused on the people and keeping safe more so than the monsters. That's how I feel. I don't know how you feel about that.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 too. I love the natural feel to this, and I'm really excited to see where John Krasinski goes now as a director as well. Off the back of this, I just looked it up. At the moment, he's attached to 2 other movies, and I'm sorry to say that none of them are A Quiet Place Part 3, which
I'm hoping, though.
I think there is going to be a third one, but yeah, he's got 2 movies lined up that he's making in that time, and I think that for me is one of the biggest parts about this franchise, is that I'm so excited to see where he goes as a director, because I love the work that he's done on these films, and as I said, I think there is still more legs in this franchise yet, so I'd love to see a number 3. So I'm giving it 4, and you're giving it
4.5, and hoping for a number 3 as well.
Definitely. But that's it for this episode of He Says, She Says Film Reviews. I've been Dave G.
And I'm Lee G.
And we'll be back soon with another episode.